Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Inside D2Football alongside Tony Nicolette, Chris Ferguson, and Matt Witwicky. I am Chuck Bittner. Justin Polizzi is standing down for the night, but he will be back with us next week. So we have a lot to unpack from a very busy day of D2 football this past Saturday. We have a handful of games to get through. There are actually 3 top 25 matchups around the country, and our team was on site for all 3 of those games. Tony was in Saginaw for the Battle of the Valleys. I was in Frostburg, Maryland for the MEC showdown between Frostburg State and Charleston. And Chris was the envy of all D2 fans on Saturday night as a sideline witness to the phenomenal game that was Ouachita versus Harding. So we'll go through all those plus a few others and then make our picks for what looks like an excellent Week 8 schedule. But guys, to get us started, we have to go straight to the game of the week, probably one of the biggest and most important games of the entire Division II regular season, and that was the number 1 Harding Bisons going to number 11 Ouachita Baptist. We all kind of thought we knew what was going to happen here. I think every one of us did pick Harding to win this game. Guys, I got to do a pregame interview for the Ouachita Sports Network. And of course, we talked about a variety of different things. And because I was talking to the Ouachita audience who wanted to try to find an angle there that we could talk to that makes this a competitive game, gives them something to look forward to. And, one of the things that I talked about with them is that, I think Tony used the term recency bias last week on the show. And I think that there definitely has been a lot of recency bias here because of how dominant Harding was last year in the GAC and in the early part of this year. But one of the things I talked about with the Ouachita Sports Network is I think people have kind of forgotten how good Ouachita has been in the Great American Conference since the formation of the league. The records within that league between Harding and Ouachita are pretty much exactly even. I think they might be within like 1 game of each other. The series between these 2 teams is even. It was like 6-6 going into the game last night. And actually, Ouachita has more conference championships in the GAC. So although we had tons of respect for what Harding had been doing, there were reasons to believe that Ouachita could make this a competitive game. All that said, I did not see Ouachita winning this one, but win it, they did. So, Chris, you were there on site. First of all, give us a few of your reactions to what the scene was like. Watching from television, it looked spectacular. The overhead drone shots of the stadium, packed house, the excitement level. Of course, the broadcast team was talking about it. It looked like the place to be on Saturday night. Why don't we start by just some of your reactions to what the environment was like there?
Well, I am here to testify, and and it was quite a scene. It was a packed house. The Harding fans traveled, and
Herg, you traveled. We can see you traveled right there.
Well, I'm just saying. As soon as I was starting to walk across the field, I was like, "Oh my gosh, they're going to get me."
That's right. We're going to get you.
Yes, and that wasn't the only shot of people who got me on Saturday night. Nonetheless, it was beautiful. The temperature was wonderful. I think it started off at like 75 or something, and it cooled down to like the high 50s. So it was excellent weather, clear skies, and like I said, it was a packed house. It felt like a rivalry game, and I kind of wondered, what's a bigger rival to Ouachita? Is it Henderson across the street, or is it Harding? But man, it didn't really matter because it was just it was a packed house. I felt like I was in South Africa because the Harding side, they had the vuvuzelas and the noisemakers, and so every time Ouachita had the ball, like they were just blowing into those things. And then the same thing with the Ouachita side, where they were just banging on the railings and the band and everything like that. So it was an awesome atmosphere. It was great.
Yeah, it looked absolutely stunning. There were a few times that they did a nice drone shot of the stadium overhead, which, huge props to Ouachita Sports Department for being able to put that out there and give it like a blimp type of a camera. Really made it look and feel like a big time production. So that gives us a little bit of the lay of the land. But how about the game itself, Chris? I mean, what a defensive performance really from both teams in this game. But I mean, Ouachita did something that I think a lot of us just did not think was possible against this Harding offense.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that Ouachita did very well, they slowed Harding down, on third downs. I mean, you see them get this really big rushing play early on, and then Harding went in for the score using the halfback pass that you see here. But one of the things they did was on third down. Harding ended up in third and short quite a bit, but they couldn't convert them. They only converted one third down out of 12 in this entire game. And then Ouachita, this isn't a Harding team you're going to blow out, right? So you got to take your chances where you can, and you kind of saw that there, and then they use that opportunity to use Kendall Givens to get into the end zone, and whereas you saw Harding sort of settling for field goals a couple of times, Ouachita didn't do that when they had their chances. They really went after Braden Jay in this game, and you kind of saw that here. This really big hit, kind of left him on the turf for a little while because they just really keyed in on him. That defense did, and then here's anything you can do, I can do better. Breaks out the halfback pass themselves to Eli Livingston, and that gave them the lead. And so you put Harding in a known passing situation, and that's not Harding's style. They looked very uncomfortable trying to drive the field using the pass. And so, a couple of other things in this game that really stand out. Ouachita only had 198 yards of offense in this game. But really stood out was the third quarter. When they opened the third quarter, Ouachita played field position. They started their drive, the first drive at their own 32, the second drive at their own 33, and then the third drive they started on the Harding side of the field, the 48. And that was the drive that they used. They had half the field to drive, and they did that and got that halfback pass. And so, that really stood out big time in a game like this. And they kept it close, and they kept it very low scoring, and that increased the odds to them, and they got it done.
So, yeah, a couple of things that really kind of stood out to me, and Ferg, I'd be kind of interested to see what you were kind of seeing as the game was going on. Eli Livingston played this whole game with a leg injury, right, and it was pretty obvious that he was on a bad leg, and he actually took, I think, more carries than anybody else on the team. And, every yard was hard earned against a really physical defense. So a real kind of a warrior performance from him.
I agree. I think when I would see him run, you could tell that he was trying to be sort of patient and get what he can. If he would have been more explosive, he definitely would have racked up a lot of yards because he had the cuts, he had the lanes, but he just couldn't get there in a timely manner. And Harding got to him. But nonetheless, I mean, I think it was enough of a threat that when the passes were there, they were there, like to Connor Flanagan, to keep drives going and keep driving, whether it was inside the red zone or trying to get down the field some. So, big credit to him because you could definitely tell that he was struggling. I think one of the things I thought too was, the other quarterbacks were sort of keeping his spirits high, and I think that's really important in a very physical game like this too.
Yeah, for sure. And we were seeing that because Whit and I were talking during the game, and we were seeing that too. The number of times where it looked like he had some room, like right up the middle, but man, Harding just gets there in such a hurry, and on a leg that's a little bit less than 100%. That's kind of a tough ask. So Whit, one of the things that really stood out to me for Harding was just they were never able to break something loose with Braden Jay. And that surprised me a bit because, early on in the game, Ouachita was having a lot of success holding their own in the middle with Dela Cruz. And he's just such a battering ram, and he gets those tough yards right up the middle. But they were really holding their own, and they were putting Harding into third down situations by only giving him 2 or 3 yards a pop. And I just kind of kept thinking, they're going to break something loose here with Braden Jay. They're going to hit him on the perimeter, and he's going to hit one of his home runs. And it never happened.
Well, and what's been so, in my opinion, so impressive, and that's really kind of taken them to a next level offensively over the championship run and into this year so far, is that he has been such a home run hitter for them. And so then all of a sudden you go from that to, the Tigers, the moment that would get to the edge, they'd have somebody waiting for him. And, a lot of times it was, safety Josiah Johnson who would come on up, and he was ready to hit him and did. And he hasn't been hit like that I've seen in games, period. And that was really, it was kind of like taking some of their ability to get really good chunk plays and kind of removing some of it. And all of a sudden now you're making them kind of live a little bit more between the tackles. And that the 42-yard gain that Ferg was talking about earlier, they didn't have a gain of 20 yards or more the rest of the football game. So if you would have told me that ahead of time, that they were going to have one explosive, the whole game, I would have said, ooh, this game's going to be real tight. And it was. And, we in watching this, you could kind of slowly see the momentum starting to go the direction of Ouachita. And then, Harding is held, scoreless in the second half. And, once this got towards the end, like Ferg was mentioning, it was a fish out of water when they had to try and go ahead and run the hurry up when their bread and butter is running the ball, running the clock. And, so we get kind of towards the end of this game, and you can kind of just sniff it that this is not going to happen for Harding. And at the same time, if you're watching this broadcast, Rex Nelson, the announcer for the Tigers, he got a whole lot of energy, and it's fun. And we felt compelled to kind of to go ahead and replay a little of that with the audio of the end, because he's something. So here we go.
They're at the 47-yard line with 4th and 5. 4th down and 5. Straight drop back. Keylon's in trouble. He throws it, and it's incomplete. It's incomplete. The clock runs out. The students start to bend. Down goes number 1. Down goes number 1. Painted purple, baby.
I mean,
love it. Painted purple, baby. I love it. That's great.
Small college football, I'll take it all day long. But I thought he was gonna have a heart attack for a moment there when he couldn't get the words out. But then after that, Chuck, I had a chance to see an interview with Paul Simmons, Harding's head coach, after the contest, and I thought he had some interesting things to say, kind of about this run that they've had and everything else that goes with that. We're going to watch that and then kind of wrap this up.
Since fall here tonight in Arkadelphia, 17-13. Coach Paul Simmons joins us on post game, and just your initial thoughts on this one tonight.
Well, I tell you, it's 25 straight games. We were the best, and tonight we came up short. A lot of credit to OBU and their staff. Those guys played really hard on defense, and it was a great atmosphere. Really, on both sides showed up. Frustrating part is I think we had about 100 yards more offense, but we didn't convert. We needed to. We weren't very good on third down, and I also promised you that the best practice of our season will be the next one that we have, because these guys are special young men, and they've got a lot of resolve, a lot of toughness. And I probably shouldn't say this. I probably should just keep it one game at a time. But I believe with all my heart that the national champion this year will have at least a loss.
I thought that was a very interesting comment at the end, guys, because we've kind of been tiptoeing up to some of this with all of so many of the top teams, are already kind of getting a loss. And I don't disagree with them. And Super Region 3, it's always interesting to hear coaches talk about the national view, because you don't hear them talk about it a lot. So I found that kind of interesting. But at the same time, I think the biggest thing in this game is what Coach alluded to right there. 1 of 12 on third downs. And a lot of them were in their own territory. And that creates a punt at that point. If they're in your territory and they don't get it on third down, they're probably going for it on fourth. So the fact that Ouachita was able to play that good of defense, just a heck of a ball game, and kind of a real high point, I thought, for the GAC as a conference.
I like the way he framed that there, Whit, because I think it was very appropriate for him to lead by acknowledging and celebrating what his players have done for the last year and a half, because it's a truly remarkable run that they have been on. And then he really kind of brought that full circle by, also alluding the fact that this does not mean that the season is over.
No,
not by a long shot. They have a loss, but if they win the rest of their games, they I feel good about their chances of being in the playoffs. And, this is kind of where I'd kind of like to bring Tony in a little bit, because you're so entrenched in this region. One of the things, Tony, about the result of this game, as we start to play it out, is, it already starts to really change our perception of what the playoff picture can look like. Obviously there's still so much that has to happen. We don't know what's going to happen in the MIAA. We don't know what's going to happen in the GLIAC, but depending on how those shake out, Harding could end up landing anywhere from like a 2 seed to a 4 seed. I think for me watching Harding, I think it makes a big difference if they have to go on the road in a playoff game versus playing at home. And this result potentially changes where some of those playoff games could happen. What are some of your thoughts on just how it overall could shape the landscape of the playoff picture down the road?
Yeah, it could. And I think one of the things that you're starting to see too is some of the teams that can play really good defense, that have shown the ability to be able to maybe not entirely stifle, but at least limit what a Harding does. Those are the types of teams that are now starting to figure a lot of things out and are starting to play at a high level. And I can think of 2 or 3 of them here in the GLIAC and a couple more in the MIAA, that if those teams get in, all of a sudden, Super Region 3, which is already complicated enough, starts to become even more difficult to predict, simply for the fact that, okay, Harding obviously found a way to get through everything last year, and everyone seemed to think that path was, laid bare already kind of for this year. And all of a sudden you're like, okay, maybe not. And I think that's one of the things about this season in total, particularly within Super Region 3, is we've seen a whole lot of, well, gee, maybe not. Just in the first 7 weeks, it's mind-blowing how competitive and how difficult this region is. And, what Coach said about the fact that about the notion of the national champion having a loss, not far-fetched by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
Yep. Well, guys, I think that puts a bow on that one. We could probably do the whole show just talking about this, because it was quite a game. Ferg, you have one more point you want to make?
Yes, one more point I would like to make. So on behalf of the Ouachita fans, we are sorry. But
yeah, fair enough.
I want to also mention this, because I did have to take a lot of these comments from the fans on Saturday. I was lucky enough to be approached by none other than star running back Kendall Givens, who had a message to deliver that, Ouachita, you got to put some respect on them now. And I think that they've certainly earned that. And so I did want to get that note in here. He does watch the show. He told me he watches the show. So thank you for that. And had a lot of players who and fans who came up from both sides who mentioned how much they appreciate what we do, and they do watch the show and tune in. So I appreciate meeting as many of you as I did. But I just want to deliver that message. Onward we go.
All right. Well, actually, that's a really good segue, K Ferg, because let's go to our next game. And speaking of folks in attendance and folks participating who watched the show, some of the folks on the Charleston sideline made it very clear to me that they know who picked them and who did not pick them in this game. Actually, even spoke to an official who watches inside D2Football. So that's always fun when you actually have an official comment to you during the game that they know who you are. That's it's still wild to me being recognized at stuff like this. It's really fun. But I had a really fun day yesterday. I obviously did not see the game we expected to see, but I had a really fun day. Just absolutely picture perfect afternoon. Frostburg's a really nice place to see a game. Was treated very well there by everyone who was on site. Charleston did not treat people so nicely. This was it was all Charleston from the go, guys. I mean, this was you can see the score there. This was every bit as one-sided as it looks, and Charleston actually kept this very simple. I think that they felt that they could just be better at the line of scrimmage. I think they saw that on film. They kept their game plan very simple. We were going right at their defense, north and south. It was mostly Siobhan Wright through the A gaps, right at him. He had 225 yards and 5 touchdowns. Monster day from him. And that was pretty much the story of the game. They just kind of challenged Frostburg to stop that, and they really weren't able to do anything about that. And occasionally Charleston actually wove in some of the passing game as well. They didn't have to call on that a whole lot, but when they did, they were very effective with that. And then on the other side of the ball, Frostburg just had no offense to respond to this at all. So I saw a lot of physicality from Charleston's defense. Was very impressed with their line play. And my takeaway really from this game, guys, is not just that I'm obviously very convinced that they're the best team in the MEC. I already was convinced of that. They have to stay humble and take it one game at a time, but I really don't see anybody else being a significant threat to them. What I really walked away from it was thinking Charleston definitely has a team that can win Super Region 1. Now, they can't start planning out that far. They've got to win their conference and get into the playoffs, but looking at the line play that they have, the physicality that they play with, and the level of talent that they have at the skill positions, I'm very convinced that they can go head-to-head with anybody in Super Region 1. So already kind of looking forward to what they could do when we get into the playoffs. But as far as the game yesterday, just total dominance and an extremely impressive afternoon for Charleston in that one. All right, Whit, let's go on to our next game. Also a top 25. Tony, you were on site for this one. Man, close score there, low scoring game, another really good defensive battle. Let's hear your take on it.
Yeah, defensive battle is an understatement. And I think we all knew kind of going into this one that might be what it was. I don't know if any of us saw these two defenses being this stingy with the other team. And Saginaw Valley, really kind of controlled things in the first half. Grand Valley's first possession, they had a penalty on the punt return, so they were pinned back deep. And on their first snap, Avery Moore got sacked in the end zone for a safety. So it's 2-0 pretty much right out of the chute for Saginaw. And then things just kind of went back and forth, for the rest of the first half with just a lot of field position play. Mason McKenzie did break loose for a 19-yard touchdown run in the second quarter, and that ended the scoring. But one of the things that was thematic throughout this game, and we talked on GLIAC Weekly this week about, hey, the big glaring statistic that came into this game was Grand Valley averaging over 300 yards a game on the ground. And Saginaw Valley wasn't having any of that. I mean, the Lakers finished with 40 or 50 yards total on 40 carries. Saginaw Valley just absolutely did not allow Grand Valley to run the ball. And I mean, it was a stifling effort. I mean, no running back for Grand Valley had a carry longer than I think 6 yards. I mean, it was just anything that they tried to do that wasn't Avery Moore getting out on the outside, they were not successful with. And on top of that, you'd think that, okay, they stifled the run, Grand Valley threw the ball over the lot. Not exactly. Saginaw Valley had 10 tackles for loss in this game, including 5 sacks. And they outgained, Grand Valley in this game by, 50, 60 yards. Now, the difference here is that both teams were held well under 300 yards of total offense. The key statistic that really makes the difference for how Grand Valley managed to keep themselves in the game long enough for their offense to put a couple of drives together in the second half is just like in the Harding-Ouachita game. Saginaw Valley was 2 of 14 on third downs in this game. 1 of 3 on fourth down. So when they had to convert to maintain possession of the ball, they were unsuccessful in doing it. And in fact, Grand Valley did not allow a third down conversion in the second half in its entirety. So the Laker defense was the story. And then a little bit on special teams too. Grand Valley really was comfortable playing field position in this game. And they did a good job of continuing to kind of pin Saginaw Valley back deep in their own end. And so just like with Harding, when they weren't converting on third downs, it turned into punts. And there were a couple of shanks that Saginaw Valley had when they punted that set Grand Valley up with short fields. And so their field goal that they got in the first quarter and their touchdown that they got in the third quarter were set up by poor punts where they only had to go the Lakers only had to go about 50 yards. So, I mean, this was a real rock fight. We talked with Coach Brady going into this one on GLIAC Weekly, and we talked about, the influence that Brandon Clayton has had on that defense. And you saw it, for all 60 minutes. I mean, every yard that Grand Valley gained in this game was a tooth and nail, scratch and claw kind of thing. And they just found a way to get enough. And I think the 9-play, 90-yard drive that they scored on in the fourth quarter was not a backbreaker, but it was a final resolve, I think, of just, okay, Grand Valley had just enough to get away with a win in this one.
All right, really good looking game there, and obviously major implications on some of the rankings and what we'll see in the GLIAC for the rest of the year. So, Whit, let's go on to our next one. Let's go down to Super Region 2. Interesting game here. It was kind of curious that Delta State actually got a lot of love in our picks segment last week, but turns out looks like a lot of us read this one correctly.
Yeah, that's unlike us to make those kind of picks and for it actually to come to fruition. Normally that's the kiss of death when we go that route, but unbeaten West Alabama coming into this game, and I think a lot of people's thoughts were, okay, this is a little bit of a prove it game for them. Maybe they're even heading in the top 10. And at the same time we thought maybe Delta State is kind of due for a bounce back game after a tough outing at West Florida. Well, this game, West Alabama outgains Delta, but at the same time, Delta's able to hit on a few big passing plays, and they both go for touchdowns. They're up 21-6 at halftime. West Alabama goes ahead and gets in the red zone plenty of times, is 1 of 5 getting points in the red zone. You're not going to win a lot of football games when that happens. And this is something that we've kind of talked about in the past with West Alabama is their defense is always good enough, but it's a matter of, is their offense going to score the needed points? I mean, it's kind of like they've got a little bit of a wing it identity. A very similar kind of deal there. So they end up taking a loss here. They're going to be okay. I mean, one loss is still going to get you in the playoff field. Delta State's obviously, scratching and clawing as much as they can. When you have 2 setbacks, you're kind of putting yourself on that line a little bit to get cut. But I was impressed with the fact that Delta State was able to kind of show the resolve, get a win like this they needed to, which will also be a quality win for their resume.
Yeah, I agree on that, Whit. And it's worth remembering for West Alabama, they have already played West Florida. So they've now also played Delta State. And unfortunately, will not play Valdosta because that game was canceled and there isn't an opportunity to make that up. So right. I think we still feel pretty good about their chances of potentially winning the rest of their games and making the playoffs. So, all right, well, let's go through the last of our box score recaps. So, it felt like something like this was maybe creeping up on us. We've talked about and to an extent kind of celebrated the fact that Slippery Rock's been winning games a little bit differently than they have in the past. We haven't necessarily seen the explosive offense, the big numbers, kind of the high-flying passing stats. We haven't really seen that from the Rock this year, but what we have seen is ball control, a sound running game, and winning with defense. And unfortunately, they just needed a little bit more of all of that in this matchup with California on Saturday. They just needed a little bit more from the offense, and guys, it just wasn't there for them. Slippery Rock only ran 50 plays in this game. They actually only had 12 rushing attempts for the entire afternoon. So when you're trying to get into a rhythm and establish a rushing attack, it's hard to do that if you just can't keep the offense on the field. And a lot of that goes to the success that California was having. They really were just winning the game at the line of scrimmage, both sides of the ball. I mean, it was pretty simple, actually. If you put the tape on, they were just better at the line of scrimmage. I haven't really seen Slippery Rock kind of manhandled defensively. It was just kind of a weird game for them. I know that their defense is better than that. Got caught out of position a little bit a few times, just missing some tackles here and there, and just a really good performance up front from California. And one of the things that they were able to do is force Slippery Rock to play from behind very early, and not just play from behind, but play from 2 scores behind from early on in the game through the end of it. So just really kind of putting some pressure on Slippery Rock that they haven't seen a whole lot in the last couple of years. And it was just a bad day to have a bad day for the Rock. When they did have some opportunities to maybe get down into the red zone and cut into that lead, they had a really good chance in the third quarter where they were right on the doorstep to make this a 1-score game. Turned the ball over, and then California went on a long drive. It was several minutes long, got a touchdown out of it, and then that was pretty much the end of the game. So, kind of like you said about West Alabama, Whit, I think Slippery Rock's going to be okay here. Still think that they're probably a playoff team. Right? They've already played IUP. So, the toughest of their schedules behind them. but there's a really good chance that this keeps them out of the PSAC championship game. So you missed that opportunity potentially. That's not definitive yet. There's still a chance for them. But California's in the driver's seat now. And so if you don't get into that championship game, obviously miss the opportunity to play for championship, miss the opportunity for that bump in the strength of schedule. But I think Slippery Rock is still in a pretty sound position to be in the playoffs. But this was a pretty tough loss for them to take.
Sure.
All right, and with that, let's go around the rest of the country and just do some quick recaps on a couple of the games. I'm not going to do box scores on these, but several results that we want to acknowledge and talk through. Whit, why don't you start us off here with a big win for an Angelo State team that all of a sudden is looking like they are the front runner in the Lone Star.
Yeah, they start off the year, Chuck, 0-2, playing the early part of the schedule as an MIAA team. No, and then after they came on back to Texas, they've been unbeaten in conference, and they're getting a little bit of offense to go with their defense and everything else that they're able to do with this football team. We had kind of talked earlier in the year about how they were just having trouble throwing the football, and but I tell you right now, I had this game on, Chuck, for 2 minutes. And Angelo gets a pick that they returned all the way right to the goal line. And I thought to myself, what other team has their defense help out their offense more than Angelo State does? I mean, when I've watched them each of the last few weeks, their first scores are almost always set up with defense or special teams, like a block punt or something. And so that's really special. They're near the top of the country in turnover margin. And, quarterback Braden Fuller had a pretty good game in this one here, pretty efficient. This was a 34-0, 27-0 kind of game at halftime. They were they just strolled here. So this is going to become a team that all of a sudden, when we start talking about playoffs and all that, they're kind of rising on up during this process. And they're going to be right there with the top teams in the Lone Star, by the time we start talking playoffs. Now, on the other side, Chuck, that was a game that I went ahead, Duluth and Sioux Falls. So I decided to do a little bit of a Whit double dip and went to Augustana, which is in Sioux Falls, and watched Winona State at Augustana for the first half. I left and drove the 9 minutes door to door from stadium to stadium. I walked in just before the second half began in this one. And Sioux Falls outlasts Duluth. Kyle Waljasper, star quarterback for Duluth, did not play. Apparently he's got a hand injury. And that would have been information that would have been good to know before I picked Duluth on my show, and got a hard time from the Sioux Falls people about it. But, that's the world we live in. And so Sioux Falls kind of, stays rocking here 6-2 on kind of their little redemption tour. But at the same time, Duluth with their fourth loss is, I think, pretty safely out of the mix. And that's not something we're used to saying, them having a fourth loss midway through the season.
Yeah, I guess the 8 coaches that picked them number 1 in the preseason poll have some regrets about that.
Just remember, the columnist didn't. But
that's right. That's right. All right. A couple of Super Region 1 results we want to acknowledge. Second year in a row that St. Anselm tripped up Assumption. Really nice result for them. Unfortunately, takes a little bit of the luster off of this week's New Haven at Assumption game. We kind of thought that might end up being the game that ultimately decides the Northeast 10. It still could. But now New Haven's kind of a game clear of everybody else there. But great result there for St. Anselm to get a big win for them over Assumption. That's kind of a more local rival for them as well. So big win there for the Hawks. And Clarion stuns Edinburgh. Guys, they were down 28-9 heading into the fourth quarter. Clarion scored 20 unanswered points over the span of about 10 minutes. A couple of really explosive plays. I think they had a pair of like 67, 68-yard pass plays. Erased the deficit, come storming back and get a big 1-point win for them in front of the home crowd there at Memorial Stadium in Clarion. Okay, Ferg, I think this one is you. I know you and your friend Gaither had a guest on your show for HBCU Game Day, the Livingstone president. A little bit of smack talk there, but it looks like the Rams get it done.
Well. With our regards, Mr. President. Yeah, that wasn't going to happen. And Winston State is on a bit of a mission right now. They had lost the last 2 games to Livingstone, and they have come back to end that little streak that they had, and now we can start another 20-year streak of beating them. So there's that, and that sets up an interesting game that we'll talk about later. Also, Permian Basin let me down yet again. I'm not picking you guys anymore. In this particular matchup, Western Oregon and Permian Basin, they exchanged leads a couple of times, then Western Oregon came back and forced the game in the overtime, and they kicked a field goal that ultimately got them over the top. So, if there's a team that's trying to keep pace with Angelo, it's Western Oregon here.
Yep. All right. Wheeling kind of had a back and forth affair with West Virginia State all afternoon. Really competitive game, probably one of the more exciting and competitive ones. Obviously, not a lot of eyes on that in the Mountain East, but West Virginia State was 5-1 and 4-0 in the MEC going into that weekend. So big result there for the Cardinals to get that dub. And then on the other side of this one, K-Ferg, this was the early part of your day. You, of course, took in the primetime game there in Arkadelphia, but before that, you got to see the Mule Riders and the Reddies. Really convincing win there for Southern Arkansas.
Yeah, I arrived at this game, and it was right as Southern Arkansas had tied the game up at 10, and then they just went one after the other, and touchdowns in particular, and you kind of saw that with the ground game, the 1-2 punch they have with the running backs, and also their quarterback rushed for like a 57-yard touchdown run. I mean, the dude got some wheels on him. So if you're, I think a lot of people that I talked to over the course of the day were very surprised by this outcome, and I certainly was as well. But kudos to Southern Arkansas to set up a very interesting matchup this weekend. And also, by the way, guys, I definitely want to give some shout outs to I met both of the athletic directors for both teams in this game. So it's nice to meet them, and also the commissioner. He and I both went to both games, so that was fun too.
Awesome.
Oh, Will Pruitt was the traveling buddy of yours?
Yeah.
Good deal.
Right. Great to see. All right, what do you got here? Pueblo wins over Black Hills, but tell us how they arrived at that score.
Well, I tell you, I wasn't traveling one of the commissioners this weekend, but no, this game was wild, Chuck. I don't even know where to begin here. Pueblo scores twice on blocked field goals that go the distance, or block kicks, I should say, and that's 14 of their points right there. They only have 200 yards offense. They're going back and forth between quarterbacks and some indecision about what's happening there. And they get outgained 500 yards to 200 yards and find a way to win this football game because, Black Hills is driving the ball up and down the field, but just can't convert enough. And heading into the big games of the RMAC, I'm not sure how great I would feel here about my Thunderwolves. I mean, you win, but what's next kind of thing? So, yeah, Chuck, I mean, we had that one. And then on the other side, we have Pitt State, who finds a way to win here, and that's kind of been their thing for a little while now. Fort Hays is up for 40 minutes in this ball game. They were leading. And they get a tip ball at the end that Pitt State gets a pick on. Pitt State goes and ends up marching in for a score with a minute left and ends up winning 18-17. Now, Pitt State did outgain them by 100 yards this game. Pitt State had some challenges in the red zone themselves. But, yeah, I mean, this is, this of course, Pitt State just needed to keep on winning so they can go ahead and have the big game upcoming with UCO. But Fort Hays is a pretty good ball club, and this is their third setback, which probably puts them in a pretty tough spot in SR3. But they're a pretty quality club. I just want to make sure we point that out.
Yep, I agree. All right. Well, I think we have a little bit more MIAA roundup here, Whit.
Yeah, this one here, boy, the uncertainty that kind of is the Bearcats right now. They lose to UCM, who we were uncertain about themselves. So, UCM, they were supposed to be one of our top teams this year, and they got 3 losses. And they find a way to go ahead and beat Northwest. Northwest, they lose the first 2, they win the next 4, then they lose the next 2. I mean, it's like the emotions that must be going on in Maryville for all parties. But and then on the other side, you got UCO in the what is going on here game. Northeast Oklahoma was ahead in this football game almost from end to end, and 500 yards of offense against Central Oklahoma. I mean, I can understand the idea of a trap game, but let's not go crazy with this. You gave up 57 points and
33 unanswered at one point.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it was like 40-23 at half. They were down, and my phone's blowing up and I'm going, "What is this?" And I mean, they were a 30-point favorite coming in, so it sets up some odd pairing with Central, Oklahoma now playing Pitt State, and for both of them, which version of them is going to come out and show up? So, wild weekend in the MIAA.
Yeah. So now, Whit, I know you said that you weren't traveling with any conference commissioners, but if the commissioner came to town and you were actually going to take them from the Augie game to Sioux Falls, but maybe only had like an hour in between, where might you take the commissioner for a bite of lunch between those 2 contests?
Chuck, I'll do you one better. They serve Boss's Pizza and Chicken at both parks I was at. So you know what?
Yeah.
I mean, there you go. So now they don't serve the pizza with the lettuce on the back. I just thought I'd point, or the bottom. I just thought I'd point that out. Ferg helping me with the map there, because yeah, and so they could dine, dine well at either location, Chuck. And you know what? If you went, that thing we did where I left at half, you could have some pizza at Augustana and have some pizza at USF. Maybe they're on the same pizza. I mean, just the thrill of the idea of it being different. But I actually had Bosses during the week. You see those the spicy barbecue on the right side and the boneless. We had some of those. I tried to sneak those on my son. Once he got a sniff of that, he could tell that they were spicy. It was all me. And then, of course, we had pizza with it because, we don't do one entree alone in this household. So, we ate for nourishment and enjoyment both.
All right. I love the fact that we tee Whit up for a chance to have a sit-down lunch with the conference commissioner, and he says, "No, I'll just feed him press box food."
That's you know what? You have to get the game
down to the field.
It's all about the game day experience, Chuck. That's what we're doing here.
All right. I love it. Well, of course, as always, our thanks to Boss's Pizza and Chicken, not only for the generous support and for the awesome food, but also for tolerating our shenanigans on a weekly basis. But love the fact that you're a loyal supporter.
If they only knew.
That's right.
If you're in the area, of course, we appreciate your patronage of Boss's Pizza and Chicken. All right.
You know what, Chuck? They're probably playing this in the back of the Bosses, going, "You should see these dopes. Look at these advertisements they do for us."
Here's our tax write-off for the year.
Exactly.
Whit, the fundraiser for Brandon did extremely well, and I think we're all very humbled to thank everyone who participated in this. But give us the latest.
Oh, Chuck, when this thing, you and I had kind of talked about before the thing ever really caught wind. And I kicked this idea around for a little bit. My fear was that no one was going to buy any, Chuck, and that there already been the the GoFundMe, and it had done very well, and it had gotten over 25,000. Which, first off, I want to mention, folks, thank you so much for this. I mean, you have no idea how much this means. Brandon's aware of all this now. I was not putting all the t-shirt thing out there while it was going on for him to know about. He found out, afterwards. I was hoping we could raise somewhere between $500 and $1,000 in this process. for us to get to $3,000 and sell over 100 garments is mind-blowing to me, and I want to thank everyone was involved in this. I cannot say that enough. I'm looking forward to my garment arriving here in the coming days. They've told us they're going to be here before Halloween.
Fantastic.
So, yeah, just awesome all around. Win-win, totally.
Fantastic.
And, Chuck, and speaking, if I could, about win-win. Guys, this is a tough one for us to see without us getting a little emotional, seeing what happened this last Friday. Brandon was taken from where he's at, his spot, to basically from hospital care essentially on over to Noah Eblin, Bob Eblin, our former national writer, one of Brandon's closest friends. Was taken on over to the Friday night game for Noah in the Kansas City area. And when I heard that this was happening, I was getting kind of excited about it. And, guys, it's been over 5 months since he's had any kind of freedom, outside of a rehab type center and things of that sort. He has not been home or any of that. So the fact that he was taken out like this, I can only imagine the emotions that he went through in the 3 to 4 hours he was outside of that. Just fantastic. And, he was pretty emotional about it, and I can only imagine. And Bob Eblin said it was a fantastic thing, and they're going to, try and figure out a way to do it again. They need to get like a handicap accessible van and everything that goes along with that, rent it out and everything. But just a pretty awesome thing. And we wanted to share that because I know a lot of folks are always asking, how's Brandon doing? Well, this was a whole lot of sunshine in his world when this happened.
Without a doubt. And I know that was something that he had said a while ago. He would like to be able to do that this year. It made me so happy to see that they were able to do that. And just for some extra context there, Brandon has always referred to Noah, the young man there with him, as his nephew.
Yep.
That's the nature of the relationship. It's not just like his buddy's son. They are extremely close. Brandon's been very involved with Noah since he was really since birth. They are extremely close, and he has always referred to Noah as his nephew. So I'm so happy he got to do that, and he looks good.
Yeah. I see he's lost a little hair since I last talked to him, and he's trying to catch up with me apparently. So apparently we have that between us.
Well, smiles all around for us. It looked really good. So, segue from there, Whit. So, guys, it's soon time to start talking about, obviously regional rankings are right around the corner. We'll be talking about that very soon, but time to start socializing some of the guys who we expect to be top contenders for the Harlon Hill Trophy. Now, by no means is this going to be a complete or exhaustive list. We're just going to throw out a couple names just so you can see here's some of the top players that we expect to be under consideration. So, Whit and guys, Zach Zabrowski as the defending Harlon Hill winner. I always think it's difficult because you're not just competing with the rest of the field. You're also in a way competing against yourself from the previous year because you're kind of benchmarked against the numbers that you put up last year. And also for Zach, Central Missouri doesn't necessarily have the team story around it that they did a year ago. And I kind of thought even as early as a couple weeks ago, it's going to be really tough for him to defend as Harlon Hill. But if you look at the numbers he's putting up, he's still leading the nation in a lot of the key stat categories, and that's going to put him right back in the running here. But Whit, we know about Zach. Who are some of the other names that you think are going to be in the running here?
Yeah, the one I think of the most directly as his competition is in his same conference. Jet Huff, who frankly, probably outplayed him, when they played head-to-head weeks ago. Now, it shows the level of separation between the yards per game that Zabrowski gets versus everyone else, because Huff is like second or third overall. Yeah. Now, Jet Huff, for those who don't know, is the Houston Cougar transfer, who is leading, UCO to all their big wins and numbers right now. And he is top in a passer rating in all of Division II. Now, a spot or two down from him is a guy who finished third, I think, last year, Sammy Edwards for Valdosta. Now, Sammy's already got the name, kind of value over and recognition over Jet because of the fact he did so well a year ago. But, Sammy is not, they're not asking him to throw and be as prolific this year. They have a little more balance with their offense, but it's hard to ignore 22 touchdowns and 0 picks along the way. So that's kind of why we have these 3 names here. There's a lot of other quarterbacks that you could have in the mix, but the combination of playing on either being a top performer or playing for a top team is kind of some of how we landed here. Now, Chuck, if I go ahead and I look at the wideout spot or running back, which frankly, it's going to be much harder to get the award in either one of those spots. Jet Huff's top target, Terrell Davis, is leading the country in 132 yards a game receiving, 9 scores. While that's tremendous, there's a lot of other receivers who are close to those numbers. Mr. Ferg could tell you all about that. He follows this stuff closer than I do. But Siobhan Wright is separating himself. He is averaging about 40 yards, 50 yards more per game on the ground than everybody else he's going against here. And 185 yards on the ground per game and 24 touchdowns is like double 10, I think 10 or 11 touchdowns more than the next guy who's behind him, who I think is Jada Byers, actually. But, if there's a running back that's got a shot, Chuck, we've kind of talked about this. You got to be near that 2,000-yard mark, probably 30 touchdowns. Worth keeping an eye on. Now, Ferg, I'm going to give it to you for 1 second. You obviously pay attention to the stat stuff more than I do. Do you think Chevy's got a chance to potentially win the award?
Well, yeah, and I think some of it too is just that, maybe the quarterback stats don't stand out as much as we think, relative to what we've seen in the past. And Siobhan Wright certainly having that type of year that gives the running backs an opportunity. So yeah, absolutely. Because we didn't mention like David Wright. David Wright from Clark Atlanta is like number 2, and we skipped over him because we're looking at some of the other quarterbacks that are maybe a little more efficient than he is. Mm-hmm. But I think that just tells you, like, if there's a year for a different position to sort of step up, which tends to be running back, then this may be that year.
Yep, I would agree with that. And you know what, Ferg, is as much as we don't want it to be the case, the name recognition, and have you done real well in this in the past, people remember that.
Yep. Yeah. And also just worth noting, and we'll dive into some of the stuff when we get later on down the road, but it also is worth noting, even though we spotlighted 2 UCO players, because, it's still very early and just like evaluating candidates, only 1 player per team can be nominated. So for UCO, it's going to be Jet Huff. We already know that.
I would think.
But just worth noting as we get further into it, it's actually 1 player per team that can be nominated. So, but it's that time of the year to start thinking about that and start socializing some of those names and start putting them out there, because before we know it, we'll be talking about the first round of nominees.
I know what we're talking about now, Chuck.
All right, go ahead. You had a really good week, so gloat and then. I had to check the numbers twice to make sure I had them right.
Ferg, care to speak a little bit here, Ferg, what's going on there? You have a 3-week under 500 situation, Ferg. We're not real sure what's going on there.
I'm still ahead of you. So there's
if that's what you're shooting for, Ferg, if that's your target, I'm not trying to say that that's not a good target, but might not be a great target.
Last week was the bottom. Limestone certainly let me down. Permian Basin let me down, and so those are 2 that were potential upsets, and I think it kind of speaks to, like, there are a lot of games that we are highlighting that are very close, and 1 or 2 plays sort of make the difference. So it makes it hard to pick, and it's certainly commendable that you're able to navigate those landmines that are out there.
Well,
Justin,
Ferg, here's to hoping that a few more teams let you down this week.
well, I just want to point out, guys, Justin had all week to think about his picks. He didn't actually send his in until Saturday morning. He had all week to think about his picks, and he still came in at 3-4.
Yeah, that should be. I think we should take away a win just on that alone. But yeah, and then he wasn't here to face the music on it either. I like how that works. But yeah. Chuck, as we go ahead and we take a look at kind of before we get to our Super 7, this was the hardest time I've had yet on who's going to make the games of interest versus the Super 7. Once again, we want to have games where we're going to have some mix and picks and all that. It's just not the same team. I thought the one that was the hardest not to include was frankly the one at the very top. Carson Newman at Emory and Henry, easy for me to say. Chuck, as we look at that game, this one's got playoff implications. It's got all kinds of stuff going on with it.
Yeah, and Emory and Henry is just a team that, again, because they're new to Division II, and it's a team that hasn't, had the opportunities to really be out there making a big statement. They've done that numerous times. They've beaten some of the best teams in the SAC during their membership. And here they are sitting here at 6-1 with just the loss to Limestone. I mean, they're still in play here for a lot of things. So yeah, there's just so much on the line. And, Lenore Ryan already showed us how difficult it can be to go to Emory and Henry and get out with a win. So
right.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think of all the games here on the board, that's one that they'll probably be watching the most.
Well, and then, the other one that's, Harding with we had talked for a lot of weeks about how we were waiting for them to play tougher competition. Well, then they drop a game, and all of a sudden the next week they got Southern Arkansas knocking. I'm not real sure if I'd want to be Southern Arkansas going into Harding after a loss like that. They are going to be hopping mad. And, whatever we thought about that game might be amplified there. Unless Harding's got some situation that we did not see that's just flat out wrong with them. But I don't think that's the case. I think that's going to be a real tough one, but definitely something worth watching. And that leads us, Chuck, into the Super 7. Well, here we are. Let's go ahead. Tony Nicolette, I'm starting with you. Let me get my sheet up so I can track all this. Sioux Falls, or a bounce-back Sioux Falls team, making a trip down to Wayne State, who's now ranked, and they're 6-1.
Yeah.
Which direction do you think you're going this one?
I just still feel like the week in, week out that Sioux Falls has had to put together has been just that little bit more robust than what Wayne State has. I like the coup on the road.
Okay. Berg, are we doing in Glow We Trust? You're wearing purple here. I feel like there's a lot going in Glow's direction here. What are you doing?
I'm going with Sioux Falls. I am going with Sioux Falls this time.
Ooh, this is interesting. An interesting turn of events. The coup, you would think would be the underdog in this game, is getting a lot of love. This feels like a Delta vibe here. Chuck, which direction are you going on this one?
I can see a lot of reasons to like Sioux Falls here. I season to date, I love what they've been able to do. They put together a great campaign so far. But no, I think Wayne State here in this one at home with.
You know what? I don't know if Coach Glow and company are what's funny, Chuck? I think that if I go on over there when they're practicing, they're going to give me a hard time if I pick against them. But at the same time, when I pick against them, I think it gets them all fired up. So, I mean, which is it? But I think Wayne State throws the ball too well down the field in the big plays, and I think that's a risk for Sioux Falls. If Sioux Falls can go ahead and be physical and establish the line of scrimmage and win that, I think they're going to win this football game. But right now, I think Wayne State is who I'm going to have to go with. Now, that said, we'll probably get Justin's picks like Saturday morning after he's had full week to research them and everything else. And by the way, for those wondering how John Dykstra did last week, he was 3-4. So before he starts, piping up and saying he did good, he did not do good, and he can live in the comments with that. So Dykstra, when you're chirping, just stop chirping. We got Indiana against Cal in a PSAC matchup here, Chuck. This is a heck of a hard game to call. I think. Which way you heading here, buddy?
Well, IUP fell victim to, what coaches like to say, don't let a team beat you twice. Well, they let Slippery Rock beat them twice because they had a deflating loss there, and then they messed up and let Edinburgh trip them up. That almost turned into a 3-game losing streak this past weekend. So kind of a gut check here. IUP's got to come out and play their brand of football and show us what they're really made of. But that's going to be a tough ask here because I thought Cal was very impressive. I think at home with them kind of, having a big win now under their belts and kind of being in control of the PSAC West, I like the Vulcans here.
Burke, which way are you thinking of going here, buddy?
Well, IUP was my bounce back team as we started the season. However,
and how'd that go for you?
Yeah.
Well, they're gonna have a winning season, so there's that.
Okay.
But man, it's like the moving truck is going in reverse right now for them, and Cal's kind of hitting on all cylinders. So give me Cal as well.
Tony, how do you see this one?
Yeah, and I don't know what the Vulcans did to tick off the people who make the schedule in the PSAC, but they basically played, what was it, 5 of their first 6 games on the road, and now they've got a 4-game streak of playing at home to close out their 10-game slate. I don't know, man, and they've looked good at home too. So I got a hard time going away from Cal here. They're not going to have to leave their home campus here for a month. I think they're going to get on a roll.
Well, I'm ready for IUP to step up here a little bit. Karst Hunter's from South Dakota. I live in South Dakota. We have a little bit of a connection there. Never met the guy. Karst, we're going to need you to kind of have your best game here, buddy. Going to keep your team alive in the playoff race. You went there to be in playoff games and all that kind of stuff. Here's your prove it game. We're taking IUP on the road.
All right, we're picking games based on being from the same state as the starting quarterback.
You know what? Justin's not here, so I got to bring in some. I got to channel some of that. I got to channel some of that flavor.
All right.
He's just tired of me being lonely in the basement. I think that's what that is.
Tony, I'm starting you off. Johnson C. Smith at Winston-Salem. We already know where Ferg's going on this one, so we don't even have to bother asking him. But where are you leaning?
Well, I made the mistake of picking against the Golden Bulls earlier this year, and then I rectified it when we had them on this second time. So I think I got to stay with them until somebody does something about them. I think I got to keep them going.
Hey, Chuck, which direction are you leaning?
Man, I like this Johnson C. Smith team. I like that they're winning close games. I like that they're winning low-scoring games. I like what they've got offensively at the talent positions. But I think this Winston-Salem's team really has something cooking right now, guys. I'm going with the Rams at Bowman Gray Stadium here.
Hey, Ferg, I've already made up my mind, so don't worry. But which way are you going? That's what I thought. Ferg homering it. You know what? I kind of feel like this is where this Cinderella ride ends. But you know what? They've impressed the heck out of me the whole way. Heck with it. I'm going with Johnson C. Smith. I like it when we split like this.
All right.
Okay, Ferg. Western Colorado, undefeated. Going into Golden against Colorado Mines. Talk to me.
Ooh, man, these games are getting harder and harder.
This is the best week yet.
Yeah. Mines, I think, still scares me a little bit. And I think Western may be on a little bit of a mission. So this is probably the year to do it if they're gonna beat Mines. So I'm gonna go at Western.
You're going to be indecisive for a moment there, yeah. So, Chuck, which way you leaning on this one?
Man, my instincts say to go with Western Colorado. They've just been getting everything done this year, but a part of me just thinks that, that the loss that Mines had might be one of those losses that really wasn't such a bad thing for them, and maybe knocked them down a little bit, maybe just made them reassess a couple things. I like what they have done since then. I think this is a tough ask. It's at home for Mines. I'm going to go with the Ore Diggers here.
Fair enough. Okay. Tony, are you going with the unbeaten team, or do you like Mines at home?
No, I don't like either one of them, to be honest with you. But
Fair enough.
I am going with Mines at home. If this game were in Gunnison, I think I would take Western. But Mines has played much more complete games at home so far this year. And they've at least played more in terms of close games. So if this is tight late, I feel like they'll have what they need to be able to win it. But yeah, these are all damn coin flips for crying out loud.
Yeah.
I'm uncomfortable taking Western Colorado, seeing what happened last time they were at Mines. It was ugly. And in the playoffs, when Western Colorado had a big game that they had to win, they dropped that one. In a game I thought they should have won. And I feel like Mines right now has kind of getting a little bit of the redemption tour going after the loss, and we're playing at home and all that stuff. I'm taking Mines in this one. Pitt State, the top defense in the MIAA, at Central Oklahoma, top offense in the MIAA. Ferg, this is not an easy one. All these are really difficult.
Right.
Some of the best, frankly, the top teams in the conferences and some of the best conferences playing each other here. Where are you going, buddy? Which way?
Well, I just want to mention, like, it's a lot to slow down what Central Oklahoma has on offense.
Yeah.
When I look at all of their games, right, the running back, Cottrell, he's running for well over 100 yards a game.
Yep.
And at least one wide receiver is at or above 100 yards in receiving yards. And Jet Huff is just launching it, just to attach a jet to the football and just launching it all over the field. And I just wonder, I think it's more of, does Pitt have enough offense? I don't know if it's going to be enough of Pitt slowing down UCO to me.
I don't think that's that's probably the same thing we're all looking at is if this game gets going, can Pitt keep up? Chuck, what do you think?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking at too. Is I love Pitt's defense, but I think that UCO is going to be able to put up enough offense and enough scores that they're going to force Pitt to move the ball and get it in the end zone. I have some concerns about them being able to do that. Now, Central Oklahoma, they can play some defense, but man, Northeastern State has me shaking my head a little bit here. So, but I am going to go UCO here. I think this is kind of just their season. I think I've been buying in more and more every week, other than, this past one was a little bit shaky, the confidence, but no, I kind of think this is their year, and I'm going to go with UCO.
Tony, which way are you leaning, buddy?
Yeah, again, coin flip. I struggle with the same thing. Can Pitt State put up enough offense? And yet at the same time, if you look at who Central Oklahoma has played, have they really played somebody who can play real defense, maybe other than Northwest? And this isn't your standard Northwest. If this game were at Kearney Smith, I think I'd feel a little bit better about picking Pitt State. But I think I'm taking Central Oklahoma as well.
Looks like I'm going to die on this hill. Well, I saw Pitt in person. They shut down, a Ferris State team that I have a lot of respect for. I mean, really impressively did that. Maybe Ferris didn't know who they were at that time. I don't know. But, at the same time, Pitt State has been able to keep enough teams to a low number. And I just feel like they are ready to play their best football game, especially since I'm picking them. I feel like I'm making not the smart pick. I think the smart pick's probably UCO. But since I'm busy trying to move myself up in the standings, I'm taking the Gorillas on the road in this one.
No guts, no glory.
Yeah.
That's right, Ferg. Speaking of that, Augustana at Mankato, Minnesota State. Ferg, I know you're wearing purple in anticipation for picking this game. Are we going in Hoffner we trust here?
In Hoffner we trust.
Fair enough. Chuck, which way you leaning, buddy?
I've been high on Minnesota State all year. I do think Augustana is kind of one of those teams that we haven't necessarily seen the game that really kind of solidifies why we've got them in their top 25. I think that they're probably better than we really know, just because of the way the schedule's kind of shaking out to this point, Whit. So I think this is a very close competitive game, but I do think that the Mavericks win this one.
Tony, which way you leaning, buddy?
Yeah, I think I'm leaning towards the Mavericks too, especially with them having an extra week to get ready for this one. So, yeah, you give Hoffner 2 weeks to get ready. That just seems like a hard thing for Augustana to have to walk in and do on the road.
Yeah, I saw that same thing, Tony, and thought much the same. But you know what? I'm going to die on this hill again. Here we go.
I love it.
You know what? I saw the Vikings in person, and they were up 17-0 at half against an improved Winona team when I left. And I think I saw them twice last year. I saw this game 2 times last year because we got it in the playoffs. I was so happy that I could see it twice. That said, Augie took care of them, cleaned their clock both times by 3 scores. I think Augie's front can defend Mankato very well. So I'm going to go ahead and take Augustana here in what's kind of a bit of an upset pick. But you know what? I can deal with all the vitriol and the hate mail from the Mavs fans. I'll be okay. I'll live through it. Well, now for the biggest game on the slate, frankly, the biggest regular season game we've had for the last handful of years. The Anchor Bone Classic, Ferris State making the trip to Lubbers at Grand Valley State. Chuck, I'm going to let you start off with this one. Which way you leaning, buddy?
Well, I'm curious to see if I'll be alone on this one or not, but I'm going with the Bulldogs here. I really like what they have done. It feels like, to some extent, since that loss at Pitt State, Ferris has been a little bit out of sight, out of mind, just because they haven't necessarily had the high-profile games since then. And they've kind of just been quietly taking care of business, working on themselves, kind of figuring out their identity. Obviously, with Carson Gulker getting hurt, it's changed a few things. I think that they've adapted. They've really figured out how to really build this offense simply around Trinidad Chambliss and really kind of make it so that it really works for him. I like what they've done. Now, of course, they haven't played a team like Grand Valley, but I kind of think that it's been building up to this for them. I think that they're ready for it. Possibly going to be considered an upset here, but I'm going to go with Ferris State on the road. The only road team I'm picking this week, guys.
Chuck firing shots right out of the gate. Berg, which way you going, buddy? Are you going Ferris too?
No, Grand Valley. No.
Oh, now what is your thought here, Ferg? What's making you favor Grand Valley? The physicality?
Well, I think it's a little bit of that. I also think that Grand Valley has just had a few more trials at that higher level with their schedule.
Mm-hmm.
That gives you a little bit more comfort, and then it's home. There's just some intangibles there to me that really stand out. Ferris this is probably the first time they've really been tested since Pitt.
True.
I mean, maybe Ashland, maybe.
Right.
But there's some unknowns for me, and I agree. They've sort of rebuilt the offense, and I think that's really helpful, and it's working. But it's a pretty stiff test. It's a rivalry game, and Grand Valley feels like the safe pick for me. I try to pick upsets, right? You talk about dying on the hill. I try to pick upsets, and I just die. So I'm going a little safe this week.
Well, I might reconsider my position next week, but after I go 7-0, I won't need to. Now, Tony, which way you going here? I think we know where you're going.
No.
But talk to me.
No, he's the expert. You make your pick first.
Well, I already know the answers to the quiz, so I'm taking the physicality of Grand Valley. Ferris just has not seen something anywhere near like this in the weeks leading up to this, where Grand Valley has been much more tested week to week. And I think the fact they're playing at home helps. I'm not in love with the Grand Valley offense right now. I'm not going to lie. I would like to be able to see them throw the ball a little bit better than I have, but I'm concerned a little bit if, get an injury at quarterback or something like that. I think there's a few risk things here, but I just think there's a whole lot more things I'm feeling solid about with Grand Valley in this game at home. Now, Tony, tell me why I'm wrong.
I don't know how to tell you that you're wrong, Whit, because all the things that you said are accurate, and K. Ferg alluded to this too, in that if you look at what Grand Valley has faced throughout this year, they have proven week in and week out that no matter how much adversity they run into, they are going to find a way. And when you look at what Ferris has had to run into since that Pitt State game, it's not much. They've got 2 or 3 teams in that slate that maybe have combined to win a single game. But you look at yesterday, they played a decent Tech defense, and Trent Chambliss throws 6 touchdown passes. This is a team that has no fear going into Lubbers, and they are rolling right now. And it's the whole recency bias thing, right? We didn't fall for it with Delta State last week. It's really hard not for me to fall for it with this one. But I don't know. There's something about the way Ferris is playing right now. It's not going to be that easy for them. And I might change my mind by the end of the week. But in terms of this one, I think I'm taking the Bulldogs.
Fair enough. There you have it. I didn't see that coming. Is he doing one of those is like the spite pick, Chuck? What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is I don't know. I think this
why
is
would I
how we see it.
To spite what?
It's
the motivation, but we'll see. I can't wait for it, Tony. I'm assuming you're going to be in attendance, are you not?
Yeah, I'll be there.
Fantastic.
Look, Tony,
I'll probably get egged, but
Boo!
I was being called out, so I can only imagine what the Grand Valley faithful are thinking about you, Tony. I might have picked differently if I was going to be at the game this year, but I will not be at the game, so I can safely make my pick.
Just like Whit, I can take it.
Yeah. I'm already getting messages from the Mavericks Mafia right now. So yes.
I understand. See, I picked with Self State because just like the comment said, I picked them as my pallbearer so they could let me down one last time. So
I like that, Ferg. I like that. Okay.
Well, we're about an hour and a quarter here, so why don't you roll our thanks real quick, and I'm going to queue up a few questions and comments to run through quickly.
Yeah, and for anybody who watched the game Saturday night, the Ouachita, if you really look at what the production their sports group puts up at the digital network there, my goodness, that should be what a lot of people in Division II are really striving for. Front to back, the whole the drone shot and everything else. Kudos to them, and we wanted to give them a shout out as we went ahead and obviously used their coverage in the highlights. Now, the interview afterwards was by the Harding Sports Network, and we've gotten to know Billy Morgan, who does a heck of a job for Harding there. And Harding's got fantastic production too. I want to point that on out. Now, I would love if the GAC got everything on one platform so I didn't have to look in all these different places for it. But you know what? The production that they have is really outstanding. And I wanted to point out Billy because we got a chance to meet him at the championship last year. Just a heck of a nice guy, and Harding's really lucky to have him. I wanted to point that out.
Without a doubt. So we'll have normal advisory throughout the week. Make sure you're checking in. Top 25 on Monday, Players of the Week on Tuesday, and then columns and podcasts all week long. You guys know where to find it on the homepage at D2Football.com. We put it out on the socials as well, but just check the homepage for that. And with that, Whit, let's throw up a few. I'm going to try to do this quickly, but there were a few comments. Throw this out there from James W. Been active in the comments most of the season. Got to meet K. Ferg. How about that? Great pleasure to finally meet Ferg at Ouachita last night. So very cool that you got to meet.
Ferg, we are so happy you made the trip.
Dude.
That's awesome.
And it is the highlight of anyone's week to meet K. Ferg.
For sure. And very much appreciate the acknowledgement for coming down to Frostburg. Had a very nice visit there. Even though it was not a good day for the home team, I definitely had a good time. Some questions, comments. Saginaw Valley would win, SR1 going away. Well, I don't know, because you know what? Northwood's in Super Region 1, so maybe not.
Oh, Chuck.
Yeah.
Also, no, I can't get on. Saginaw's really good, but I think Saginaw would be a really good Super Region 1 team. But let's not act like they would run through the competition.
That defense
if they were that good,
that defense is awful good, and they're playing way better now than they were when they played Northwood.
If they were that good, they'd beat Grand Valley and Ferris every once in a while.
Fair enough.
So, Chuck, Kutztown or Carson Newman, which team's body work has been most impressive so far? I think they're impressive in different ways, Calvin. Kutztown's just been better than everyone else that they have played. Certainly looking like the class of their division, possibly the class of the conference. Carson Newman's just been winning games in lots of different ways. You know, they're kind of a team that's just been finding whatever it takes to win. Sometimes it's offense, sometimes it's defense, sometimes it's penalties, sometimes it's special teams. So, just finding ways to win, gutting out close games. I don't know that I could say which is more impressive. I'd put more faith in the team that's just out executing the other team every week. So that would be Kutztown. But they're kind of impressive in different ways. There was a lot of questions. I'll just throw this up there because there was a lot of discussion in the comments about what does this mean for Harding in terms of playoffs and all that. I would agree with Inkbot here. A 10-1 GAC team is pretty likely to make the playoffs. So agree.
I think a 10-1 anything team is probably likely to make the playoffs.
Sure. It has happened where a 10-1 didn't make it, but that's pretty rare.
Right.
Question for K-Ferg. If Johnson C. Smith were to win out but lose the CIAA championship, would their body of work justify a playoff spot?
I mean, I think so. They're only, that would mean that they will lose to Virginia Union, right, as a other potential playoff or championship team, and that would just nullify the games because they split the games. So that leaves JCSU as a pretty good contender, probably going on the road, but a great contender for a playoff spot in Super Region 2 nonetheless.
Yeah, all right, and that's again like a 10-1 team. So, I think it'd be a playoff team as well. Just a comment from Ouachita Sports Digital, thanking me for doing the interview. Obviously, we thank you for having us on, giving us the opportunity to do that. Kids did a really good job. They were well prepared, asked good questions. They'd done their research. They knew the names. They knew stats. So they were very well prepared for that and did a nice job. So congrats to them. Very happy to participate in helping them in their educational journey as well. So, and then we'll end with this last real question on there. Chances of Charleston breaking the top 10 this week. I think they're close, especially looking at some of the other teams around them that, kind of in that mix where they're at sort of in that middle. I think they're very close. I don't know if they're going to get into the top 10 this week, but I think that they're probably just outside. Any of you guys see that any differently?
My thoughts were it was a little bit of a leap from where they were. What were they, about 16, 17, somewhere in that neighborhood?
16th this past week.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a bit of a leap to get in, unless a bunch of the other teams are losing. And I don't know if any of us viewed that as it's a quality win, but I don't think it was viewed as a dramatic win. I would imagine them somewhere around that 12, 13 or something like that. But I think they're right on the way. And frankly, let's be really honest, folks. Everyone enjoys these ratings, but at some point real soon, the regional rankings and the playoffs and all that stuff's going to be all that matters. And all that stuff's just eye candy.
Yep.
Yeah. And we're only a week away. So we will see the first release of the regional rankings, not this coming Monday, but a week from Monday. So now, as a reminder, that's just going to be the alphabetical list. It's not actually ranked 1 to 10, but it'll kind of be our first look at the picture of who the committees are considering. So the season really kind of changes at that point. So guys, we're right around an hour and a half. So I think we'll call it at that. Thank you for the questions, the comments, all the participation. Thank you for the build up to all the games and all the interactions that we see on social media. I know because of some of the magnitude of some of the games, I saw a lot more Twitter activity, X, whatever we call that, Facebook, the message boards. There's a lot of increase there. It's always fun to see that. Whit loves being tagged on X, so feel free to do that. Makes them very happy to see all the love and the attention that he gets when you tag him.
I'm changing my settings right now.
That was a fun week, and I'm looking forward to what that turns into when we get to playoff season. So we will end it there, guys. Thanks for a great show. Justin will be back next week, so we'll celebrate his awesome picks again, and we will see you for another episode of Inside D2 Football. Thanks, everyone.